Tonight, AEW Fyter Fest Night 2, the second night of the 2-week extravaganza put on by AEW, is going to be main evented by Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy. Really looking forward to this one. I think this one is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a great match. And it's certainly going to be an interesting match considering what it's going up against. Of course, it goes without saying, you can't mention one without the other. It's going up against the winner-take-all match by NXT, the NXT Great American Bash, Keith Lee versus Adam Cole. So really interested in a lot of things here, and we're going to get into a lot here when we talk about Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho tonight at Fyter Fest. Now, again, we should mention here, like I did earlier with the NXT Great American Bash preview video, there have been spoilers for this video. There haven't been spoilers for this video, as far as I'm aware of. I don't think my play's been bugged. There have been spoilers for Fyter Fest, for Night 2 of Fyter Fest. It comes off someone that was invited to attend Fyter Fest last week, a bit like NXT. AEW taped Fyter Fest back-to-back, as far as I'm aware, last week. And it's a shame, isn't it? I guess it's part of the era that we're living in at the moment when it comes to professional wrestling and how we negotiate professional wrestling and go through professional wrestling in the current pandemic, because just for health and safety reasons, and rightfully so, shows have to be taped obviously behind closed doors, but also they have to be taped very quickly to each other. You can't have a weekly live professional wrestling show during a pandemic. You just can't. It's just not feasible. The travel alone is difficult. Getting everyone in one place is difficult. So it's just easier to get everyone in one place for one time and knock out as many TVs or events as you can and record as many as you can in one sitting. So that's been the case for AEW, WWE, and everyone else for that matter. So that's been the case for Fyter Fest last week. They taped Fyter Fest after they taped Night 1. And what they've been doing, AEW, and this stirred up a little bit of controversy, so it's good to talk about here, that AEW, of course, isn't just having their wrestlers or local independent wrestlers in the crowd to make atmosphere and noise. They've also started inviting local Daily's Place sponsors. Of course, AEW Fyter Fest, like any AEW Dynamite shows and any AEW shows for that matter, have been taking place from Daily's Place, since that's owned by Tony Khan and his father. The Khan family. They've been inviting Daily Place's sponsors or Jacksonville Jaguars sponsors. Of course, Daily Place backs onto the Jacksonville Jaguars stadium. They've been inviting them to the show, and they've been sitting in the sort of upper ring there at Daily's Place. Now, this caused a lot of controversy last week because it was reported that these people, as they're coming in, aren't being fully tested. They're having their temperature checked. I believe they're being told to wear masks. I'm not sure if that's completely confirmed as well. But they weren't having full-on COVID-19 tests as all of the performers and anyone at ringside is. So that stirred up a little bit of controversy, but we'll touch on that at another time. The main point being is that one of these people that was invited to watch the show last week did leak the results of Night 2 of Fyter Fest. So the entirety of AEW Night 2 of Fyter Fest, the results of AEW Fyter Fest have been supposedly leaked online. Now, it's not been confirmed whether these are actually the case. We'll have to wait and see how legitimate these spoilers are. If coming out of Fyter Fest Night 2 tonight, all of the results are bang on, then we know exactly that person was a legitimate leak. I think it's funny, on Being the Elite this past Monday, the Elite actually mocked NXT for the NXT spoiler that was leaked between Keith Lee and Adam Cole by an NXT superstar. So it's quite ironic that they're mocking NXT for leaks when AEW, they've got their whole card leaked, which is not ideal in the slightest. But in terms of the Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy main event, this is what we're talking about here. Is it going to draw in more fans than the NXT North American Championship and NXT Championship main event winner-take-all? I don't think so. I just don't think so. I don't think the stakes of an Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho match line up to the first ever double champion in NXT history and a title guaranteed to changing hands. Look, there's no main title on the line tonight. Yes, there are tag team title matches, etc. But what was previously your main event, the AEW World Championship main event between Brian Cage and AEW World Champion Jon Moxley, of course, is no longer happening. That's happening next week at AEW Fight for the Fallen. So there's no big draw on this show. There's no big pull on this show. I guess tonight we will truly find out how much of a ratings draw Chris Jericho is. I must stress, I do think that Chris Jericho being in the main event is way more of a draw than Kenny Omega Hangman Page versus Best Friends main event from night one. I absolutely believe that, so I do think AEW have a stronger main event this week. I also think the Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy match that we're going to see this week is going to be a better match without a shadow of a doubt. Chris Jericho has openly said numerous times, several times at this point, after taping the match last week, that this match against Orange Cassidy is one of the best matches he's ever done in his career. And think of that statement. Think of the matches that Chris Jericho has had in his career. He's been wrestling for over 30 years at this point. Some of the matches he's had, Shawn Michaels springs to mind, Kenny Omega, etc. He's had some absolute barn burners. He's had the likes of Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. Those matches were great as well. So to put Orange Cassidy on that list at this stage in his career is a pretty big statement by Chris Jericho. Some people might roll their eyes at that statement and say, well, is he just saying that to try and get people to watch? And that's probably a part of it. There's no lie there. That's probably a part of it. He wants people to go, seriously? Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho is one of the best matches he's had in his career? I've got to watch this. So that is part of it, without a shadow of a doubt. But I think he really means it. Now, it was mentioned on those spoilers last week that the Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy match absolutely tore the house down, and Orange Cassidy as an underneath babyface, a comeback babyface, was like nothing they'd ever seen. They're talking Daniel Bryan in 2014 style, that kind of underdog babyface, which is really interesting because Orange Cassidy, you got to think, when AEW first started out, Orange Cassidy wasn't actually on the first ever AEW pay-per-view Double or Nothing. He appeared on the pre-show in the Battle Royal, and he did the Orange Cassidy kicks, the sloth kicks to Tommy Dreamer, and then he get thrown out by Tommy Dreamer or someone attacked him. Either way, he wasn't in there very long. And fast forward to just over a year later, and Orange Cassidy's main event in Fyter Fest against AEW's biggest star, their biggest draw, a living legend in professional wrestling, a future Hall of Famer without a shadow of a doubt, the first ever undisputed champion in WWE history, beat Stone Cold and The Rock on the same night. Chris Jericho. He's facing Chris Jericho in a main event. I know it's not exactly a pay-per-view, but it's a pay-per-view. Arguably will be seen by more people since it's actually on cable television rather than pay-per-view. He's facing Chris Jericho. What a rise by Orange Cassidy. And Orange Cassidy was one of these names that just got so roundly criticised when AEW first started, right? Orange Cassidy, he wasn't pro wrestling enough for some people. I don't want to mention Jim Cornette or anyone like that, but he wasn't the only one that was criticising Orange Cassidy. He was the pockets guy, right? He just had his hands in his pockets. He did these little stupid kicks. He did the thumbs up. He did no-sold everything, and people went, that's not professional wrestling. It was too funny for them, or it was too quirky for them, or it wasn't legitimate or real. And maybe that criticism was slightly justified in the fact that it was too over the top and it was too silly. But a lot of people recognize that if the crowd is cheering, if the crowd is entertained, and if people like it, if social media, who are all over Orange Cassidy, they love him, if he's getting that reaction, he must be doing something right. And I credit AEW for this. AEW absolutely have recognized that Orange Cassidy, he's getting over with the fans. He is over with the fans. Tony Khan was on the AEW Uncensored podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he made mention of this. He said, with all the data that we have, we're seeing that Orange Cassidy moves the needle more than anyone else. Now, how true that statement is, I don't know, but Tony Khan is well known for being a very, very analytical person. He has his own analytics company that he provides for a bucket load of NFL teams, especially for the Jaguars. He is very much in the analytics side of things and likes to see what works and what doesn't work in terms of ratings and social media trends, etc., merchandise sales. Orange Cassidy's at the top of all of those lists. You can tell by the AEW on TNT Twitter account, which is obviously AEW based, but it's also got a huge influence by the people over at TNT, and they're all over it. Orange Cassidy is their favorite superstar or wrestler. You can tell that by just the way that they talk about him. So he's really over with the AEW office. He's obviously very over with the AEW crowd, but you look at all the merchandise that he sells on Pro Wrestling Tees or AEW Shop, he does very, very well. So I guess it was then AEW's next point of trying to figure out, okay, this guy is very over. He sells a ton of merchandise. He does great on social media. How do we manifest this into having a great wrestler? How do we make this go further? How do we make him legitimate? And they've done that this year. They've absolutely done that. Obviously, AEW and Orange Cassidy, they have done that this year. Ever since the match he had with Pac, that was the real turning point for me when it comes to Orange Cassidy. We'd seen Orange Cassidy, get involved in the best friend matches. He'd had his comedic moments backstage and in the crowd, and got the pop from the best friends, and got the pop from the crowd whenever he was in the ring, but he never had a match. And then when he had that match against Pac at Revolution in February, everything changed. Because if that match didn't happen on the same card as Hangman Page and Kenny Omega versus the Young Bucks, which was a tremendous tag team match, one of the best matches of 2020 in any professional wrestling company. If that match, the Orange Cassidy versus Pac match, hadn't happened on the same card as that would have been the match of the show, because it absolutely, apart from the tag match, absolutely stole the show. It was amazing. The crowd were into it. Orange Cassidy and Pac, they had a tremendous match, and it wasn't comedic. They did proper wrestling moves. They had proper wrestling holds. They had dives. They had stiffness. They had reality. There was some psychology there as well. And a lot of people, it made people turn their heads at Orange Cassidy. They went, whoa, this guy can actually work. Not only have we seen this one side of him where he's this weird, slow character and different, he can work and he can have great matches. And ever since then, when we've seen Orange Cassidy in matches, whether it's been on Dynamite or whether it's been at Double or Nothing in the ladder match, we've seen that Orange Cassidy can work, and he does have this weird... it's the Daniel Bryan effect, I think. Once you're over with the crowd to the level that an Orange Cassidy is over with the crowd, you are the ultimate babyface. All you need to do is get the hell kicked out of you, and they'll cheer you, Once the crowd's on your side, then that just takes a match from a 5 to a 10. It just does, because the crowd is everything. And obviously, we're in a situation or a current era where we don't actually have a proper paying attendance. We do have a slight crowd. But even so, when you're watching at home, and if you're behind this guy and you like this guy and you want him to succeed, there's nothing you can't do to make the match bad. And I think that's going to be the case tonight. People don't expect Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho to tear the house down. When the expectations are so low, I mean, obviously they're higher than they were prior to Revolution earlier this year, but when they're so low, you can only succeed, and I think that's going to be the case. Chris Jericho, I mentioned it earlier, has been in the professional wrestling industry 30 years. 30 years. I think he gets how to psychologically get an underneath babyface over. Chris Jericho doesn't work with someone that he doesn't want to work with in AEW. I'm not saying he's Hulk Hogan. I ain't saying he's got carte blanche, but he's pretty much got a say on what he's doing and who he's doing it with. And I think he's mentioned some of these guys he wants to work with. He's worked with Darby Allin. He's worked with Jungle Boy. He's worked with Scorpio Sky. And now he's working with Orange Cassidy because he's smart. He sees what's getting over. He sees what's working. Orange Cassidy is getting over. Orange Cassidy is working in AEW. And Chris Jericho knows that. And it's not a Hulk Hogan scenario whereby Chris Jericho wants to work with him just to get himself over or get the most money. I don't think that's the case. I think he genuinely wants to help Orange Cassidy get to a next level. We've always said Orange Cassidy can only get so far with this gimmick, but once he gets serious, well, then all bets are off. Once Orange Cassidy gets serious and he starts working, then he can be a superstar. And that's what's happened with Orange Cassidy. You've seen in this build-up with Chris Jericho. Once Chris Jericho bludgeoned him with those blood oranges, and drew blood from Orange Cassidy, that made things serious, and that was the aim of that segment. Chris Jericho actually retweeted a post I did on at 365 Wrestle on Twitter when he said that this is now serious. It was a comedic thing before of calling himself the baddest man on the planet, and they had a few pull-aparts. Once Chris Jericho drew blood, then that's serious. That's serious heel shtick right there. And now they've brawled into the crowd. Orange Cassidy has punched Chris Jericho out the stands. Chris Jericho drew blood once again. Orange Cassidy still wears the shirt that's covered in blood from those two attacks. And Orange Cassidy hasn't had to cut a promo because he doesn't need to. His character is so physical, and his mannerisms are so deadpan and so just non-existent that everything he needs to say is in his character. He doesn't need to cut a promo to get over, and he's proved that. I don't think he's spoken once in AEW, has he? Maybe once or twice, but even then he's probably said one word. So this is the character, and Chris Jericho realizes this. So the match tonight, I'm really looking forward to. Again, I don't think it will outdraw NXT. I think NXT, the stakes are just too high on that main event. Some people have obviously questioned with the spoilers for the NXT main event, is that going to make people tune into AEW or maybe make them tune into NXT more? I don't think it'll have a massive effect on things, if I'm really honest. I just don't see it having a massive effect on it. Purely because I just don't think it's the same as the 1998 situation. I mean, I mentioned it in the video earlier today. I don't want to chew my food twice when it comes to that, but I don't think it changes that much. I think the AEW and NXT viewership bases, I think they're actually quite distinct. I think you have AEW fans, and then I think you have WWE/NXT fans. I don't think there's a huge amount of crossover. Obviously, there is a bit because it's professional wrestling, and you've got people like you and I that are so invested in both shows. But I don't think there's as much crossover as people think. People got to realize when AEW have historically got their lowest ratings, it's usually when there's been something major going on in the news or the world or anything like that, and the younger audience, which AEW has, that's why they beat NXT in the demographics every week. They have that higher 18 to 29 demo or 1839. I never get that right. I don't know. I should probably just read up and find out. I just can't be bothered. But they always come higher in the demos, AEW, so they have a younger audience. Now, obviously, being that younger audience is something big has been going on in the world, which 2020, all it's been is big things going on in the world and the world melting down. Them less inclined to watch because they're watching the news, they're watching press conferences, they're watching announcements, whatever. The younger audience are watching it, whereas the WWE audience, the NXT audience is considerably older. The only demographic they beat AEW is in that 50-plus audience. That audience is more steadfast in their viewership patterns, so it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. They're going to watch their WWE or NXT every single week. And I think that'll be the same case this week. I think people who have been watching Raw or SmackDown, or in Raw's case, hardly anyone, but those people that are watching Raw and SmackDown are more inclined to watch NXT at the moment because more is going on around there and you're having some main roster stars appear there too. So I think NXT will win tonight, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy surprises a lot of people. This is going to be a match that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a match that I think is going to be really psychologically sound, and I think ultimately, look, people are going to be coming out of Wednesday night talking most likely about the NXT main event because we're going to have such a historic moment in having a double champion crowned. But I think we're also going to have a lot of people talking about Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho. And I think the narrative might be, look, even though AEW didn't win this week, their main event was absolutely on fire, and it was a lot better than people thought it was going to be. So really excited for both shows. Still torn on which one I'm going to watch live. Be sure to follow us on Wrestle News at 365 Wrestle on Twitter. I'll be covering both shows as best as I can. Usually I'll watch AEW on a Wednesday, but who knows? I might change my mind tonight. We'll have to see. But of course, this is just one man's opinion. What is your thoughts on Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho tonight on night 2 of AEW Fyter Fest? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. They're on the screen right now at 365 Wrestle on Twitter and at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram, so be sure to give us a follow there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Enjoy AEW Fyter Fest or NXT's The Great American Bash, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.